embarrassing. My phone was on and it went off. Can't stop.
Everyone please stand. We'll call this city council meeting to order. We have a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask Councilman Greg Hampton to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will have roll call. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mrs. Wilkins-Brent?
Here.
Mrs. Butcher-Conway? Mrs. Hambrick?
Present.
Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion is made by Mr. Allen,
Second.
second made by Mr. Stone. Are there any further discussion and/or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. You should have received the check registry. If you have received those, please raise your hand. Let the record show that all have received it. At this time, we have public comments, and we have Mr. Tim Miller will come on up, and we just remind you have 4 minutes. Please state what your concerns are. And this is not a question and answer, and you can go from there.
Okay. Mayor Jenkins, City Council, good to see you. Thank you for this time to speak. This is in regards, I guess, to the letter, or not to the letter, but to the article that was in the news graphic a couple Fridays ago about proposed increase in the insurance tax premium. And I struggle with the individual citizens having more taxes. And Mayor Jenkins, it's not anything at you or anybody on the council. It's just, I know you're trying to find ways to bring revenue streams in, and I respect that because the city of Georgetown does need our fire, police, EMS, city services. We need all that, but I think we need to look beyond the individuals in the community and go to our corporate citizens and ask them to help with things that need to be done. I think they should be paying their fair share. I've worked for a large corporation here and recently retired, and I appreciate that opportunity. But having said that, when we go and offer all these incentives and abatements in, and this is not currently, but this goes back a long time. I've lived here 24 years and I've seen it. When you're not bringing that money in, you're not able to staff your police or fire. You're not able to competitively pay them, which has become an issue. And I think that it needs to go back to them that we need to say, hey, we need some way of you helping during this time until till this ends or whatever. Some companies have like 8 or 10 year abatements, and it seems to like continually roll. But then you have new companies that are coming in and we offer them those incentives. I know it's to get jobs in the community and I understand that, but you can't give the farm away, so to speak, just to get cows in the pasture. So I respectfully ask that you not increase any more taxes on citizens of this community because we struggle. Fixed income folks, lower income folks. I sort of second guess myself about retiring, but I made that decision. I'm going to find a way to make it work. But with the economy the way it is, prices, I respectfully ask you to reconsider that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to that was not listed and want to speak at this time? All right, thank you. A couple of comments from my perspective. First of all, I want to welcome Emily Buttram, who is our new city attorney. This is her first meeting, and again, welcome you, and I'm glad that you're here with us. A couple of updates, as I mentioned before, with the cemetery sign and so on. We are still moving forward with that. We should hopefully, once we get the final portion of the historical group involved, as well as we have the signature for the sign that a couple of our citizens put together, and want to give some kudos to Terry Thomas and Kitty Dogood for actually coming in and doing with that, and also to Miss Willow Gentry, who had a hand in actually doing the getting the Historical Society to come in, and they're going to actually make it a graveyard where it's going to be a historical event. And they are, Devin and I have talked with them, and they're going to have a proclamation. We're going to set a proclamation, and they have got a little signage up. One is talking about the history of the graveyard, while the Historical Society is mainly focusing on the soldiers, the Buffalo soldiers that were actually buried in there, as well as others that fought in the Civil War and so on. So once we get it all squared away and dates decided and all that information, I will make sure I bring the council to let you know what day we want to do this. We want to make this a big event, because I think this will be history in the making when doing that. Couple things to remind you of. Excuse me, the groundbreaking ceremony is going to be this Friday at 9 a.m. That's for the EMS new station there. Also, this Friday at 11 o'clock will be Lido Way presentation at 11 o'clock. And you're all invited to go there for that. The Christmas parade will be Saturday, and it will be is it 7 or 6? 6 o'clock? Thank you. And so those of you all, council, you want to get to ride in the fire truck with Santa Claus, you can do that. Some of you may want to get in good with him. Okay, for this year, here's a good chance to get what you want, all right?
You didn't when you said that.
No, ma'am, I did not. It's part for me more than anybody else. So that will be this Saturday.
This
And-
Saturday.
Yes.
What time,
6 o'clock, okay? And so if you want to ride, please let us know. And so you can contact Wendy, and Wendy will let Chief know more about that. All right, couple of updates on Bridge Street. We've been doing some talked in my last meeting. We're doing some updates, and here's what it is. We really have two choices. Choice number one is do nothing, leave it as it is. Number two, tear it down. But we do have a clause in there if we decide to go that route, where we could tear it down. Excuse me. The railroad could tear it down, and at their cost, and pay us, I think, $145,000. $140,000, and then in that contract agreement, it gives us the right that later on down the road, if we want to go in and rebuild it, we do it at our own cost, but it has to be done back to the specs of which the railroad has to be put in. So those are our two choices. So I'm open to what this council think we want to do with that, but those are only two choices we have at this time. To do nothing and let it go, or tear it down and rebuild it at a later date, if that's what we want to do. And the cost is somewhere, I believe, around, I'm just going to give you a rough estimate, but I know it's around $3.8 million to do that.
To do what, Mayor?
I think to put a new bridge back in. Is that close?
I honestly don't know the
Well-
latest number. I know Eddie's not here.
But it's significant, let's put it that way. It will take a little bit.
How much did you say, rebuild it?
Don't hold me to it, but I'll find out. But I think, that's the conversation I had about, he said it would, years ago, I think it was about 1.8 at that time. So, but it's be around almost 3 to do it correctly. So, but like I said, I will get those numbers hard line and get it back to this council to make sure. So with that, but those are 2 choices here, what we have. And, so I'm open to some thought on this. Yes.
So we had some people take a look at it
Yes, we did.
structurally,
Yes.
and I haven't heard what their findings.
Well, we had a couple of engineer people look at it, and you cannot repair it. You have to just take it all down and rebuild it back up.
Did they say it was currently in a dangerous situation?
No, they did not say that. It just simply said that if you was going to doing repair, wouldn't do much to help it. But it's not structurally to where it's going to fall in on somebody. Let's put it that way. So that's
We didn't ask for their opinion about
Yeah.
whether it is structurally, we didn't ask for an opinion on, yes, this is safe, or yes, this is unsafe. That wasn't part of the request, I don't think. I wish Eddie was here to speak to this.
All we wanted to do was could we rebuild it or repair it, or was it beyond repair where you just have to the best way to do is to take it down and rebuild it?
So, given the growth that we've had in our city, and I see that as an important corridor for that area of town, just getting emergency vehicles over there quicker, is an option rebuilding at the railroad cost, that they rebuild it at their cost. And there's the infrastructure bills out there for roads and bridges and things that some federal money could be available, but again, letting the railroad rebuild it at their cost. Is that not an option?
I think their perspective is there's no benefit to them. What's the purpose of the bridge to them?
They own it, don't they?
There's
It's speculation.
apparently there's little certainty over the ownership of the bridge, but regardless, I guess my devil's advocate question would be, if I'm the railroad, why do I care if that bridge is there?
If you've had it, and it's our city, and you're doing business in our city,
Yeah.
supporting the community. And that is to me, it's an important corridor that we need to look at as we grow.
Well,
I want to second on that. I mean, I think it's very important to keep the bridge myself. If there's any way we can. I
anyone?
just listen to a lot of my constituents, and I just feel like,
Okay.
And I've heard from a couple people that the Legacy Trail could be taken through that way, but I know that's one option, and another one was bringing it down Clayton Avenue and into Royal Springs Park and then out from there. But we're not sure which. But that's definitely an option to bringing it into to the downtown area.
a lot of people are walking, when they're walking to work or whatever like that, and they're coming down, what is it, Bourbon, going under that bridge. I mean, it's really dangerous, but when they can use, access that other part, I mean, that's just, safer for the pedestrians and everything like that. I mean, if we can find some way to try to save it, like I said, that's where I'm leaning towards.
Mr. Showalter?
Would it make sense to have an engineer look at it to make sure it's structurally sound at the present time?
Well, I mean, I think we had some people look at it,
I might have misunderstood it. I thought you said we didn't.
we didn't ask for an opinion on that, but they,
I can read the email if you want,
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
just to give a little bit more background. So this is from an engineering firm that Eddie reached out to, and he said, I've discussed this with our structural design and inspection folks in detail. Based on our review of the available KYTC bridge inspection reports, our professional stance is that the bridge is beyond its useful life and is not able to be rehabilitated for vehicular and or pedestrian traffic. Every aspect of the bridge has issues, beams, piers, deck, etc. Another aspect to consider is that the bridge doesn't meet current railroad clearance standards and requirements. And then they offer to provide a cost estimate for a new pedestrian and or vehicular bridge, just based on feedback. So once again, that's just one engineering firm's perspective after reviewing the Transportation Cabinet's file.
Did the railroad give an indication as to what they favored? Do they want to take it down, or?
They've been asking the city to take it down for like 12 years, or for permission for them to take it down, excuse me. So they definitely want to. I think what they do is, I think nationwide, they identify at-risk areas and make these kind of offers, because, like I said, for them, the clearance issue is, I mean, there's obviously that issue. I mean, there's a benefit to them if it is able to meet their current standards and clearances, but also just the safety aspect from their perspective, I believe.
To follow up on that, is, not to put you on the spot or anything, but is there any kind of legal liability for the city if we choose to leave it up against the recommendation of the railroad? If someone was to,
We can always be named,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, the ownership of the bridge is, in question. It goes back
Right.
however many hundred years.
Right.
But, we run into that situation. We run into it with sidewalks, right? Even though our code of ordinances clearly says that the property owner is responsible for sidewalk maintenance, if there's a defective sidewalk, we're always going to be named.
thank you.
Well, I have, my thoughts are this, is that it's been shut down for like 10 or 12 years. And the thought process is that the railroad came to us and offered us money for them to spend their money to take it down and make it safe and shore it up, with the opportunity of us being able to go back in when we do have the money to try to put it back. But I mean, people have, they've been able to get around and do what they do with it being shut down because it's not safe. And if the railroad wants to come in and shore it up and do it safely at their cost, I don't know why we wouldn't do that and then have that $140,000. And then we have a clause in there saying that we can come back. At any given time, it can be on one of our lists of things to do, because we have many, but it all takes, as we all know, money. So, you have to take a pick. But that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, because hearing that letter has kind of made me feel like they didn't come right out and say that it's unsafe, but that's the sense I get when I hear the letter, is that it's not secure. And, you see train derailments that have, things can fall from it and it can be on the track. And I'm worried about people getting hurt. I'm also worried about the safety of the trains and the clearance problem. So did the railroad give a time that they need this decision to be made, and this, so they can start this? I mean, what are we looking at here?
So they were wanting, they were pushing it. They wanted to get it bid in this year's cycle. I think they have X amount of dollars they allocate to these kinds of projects per year. I mean, I think they know that it takes time and decisions are not made lightly. So I think that if we don't make a decision right now, they're going to go away? No, not necessarily. I've still got a good contact with them and glad to update him on the conversations. But like I said, we've got correspondence from them dating, I don't know if it was 2012 or this offer was made over a decade ago. So, and they're back making it again. So to answer that, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they want to do this project. And they do this everywhere. Local officials have to make decisions.
Yeah.
And so I can ask if they have a tight timeline, if there's a drop dead. I don't think there is. I think they wanted to get it bid out this year, but I think that ship's probably sailed regardless.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, besides needing to know what the timeline is if we take that money and we earmark it for some kind of pedestrian opportunity, maybe there's a creative way to make a crossing somehow, somewhere else, like Todd's talking about.
We could definitely take that bridge, if we were to take that bridge out, one of the cheaper options would be a pedestrian bridge.
Right.
Somewhere, Bourbon Street, Flint Court area.
Right.
And go up and over the tracks. Or even go back up to that that bridge, where that bridge was, and make it a pedestrian bridge.
That's what I'm thinking.
We could do that, but just keep in mind that the whole reason I think that the railroad wants to take that bridge out is because of the stackable that they're bringing through there. So that pedestrian walk will have to be
to their specs, right?
Yes, and then, yeah, it would have to be to their specs.
And we will have to involve them in the process.
Yes.
Because before we even go there, they will tell us this is the way it should be, and
Right.
they're gonna have the majority say so how it works.
And the pedestrian bridge could definitely lend into the Legacy Trail if that was the route that they chose to
Right.
bring the Legacy Trail in, so.
Mr. Showalter?
This will not be a popular comment. Some might be upset. It is going to be an inconvenience for some as well. I think the bridge has got to come there. I think it has to. And that's painful for me to say, but I think it has to.
I think sometimes that, we have to stop and think about even the one that goes across over there on Lemons Mill, Clayton and Lemons Mill. Fire trucks and buses can't go across that right now. They've rerouted.
Right.
And I'll take it all the way back. I don't know if Greg remembers this or not, but when I lived on Crumball and they had the old bridge down there, buses couldn't go over it. So you know what I had to do? I had to walk to 460 to catch the bus till they rerouted, till they figured it out. But it's got a nice bridge now. It takes time, but eventually, that was over a creek, not a railroad though. So they worked on it a little bit harder, I'm sure. But it's very costly.
And maybe you stated this, what's the cost to tear it down?
I don't know that. I can ask them if they have that cost estimate. I'm going to assume that, especially based on the haul off of the materials, it's going to be, I'm not even going to guess, it's going to be very significant.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
And where does the 140,000 come from? Whose idea was that?
They offer,
That's up, yeah, we try to do a little bit of negotiating, but that's the hardline stance.
That was offered 10 years ago, 140.
no,
No.
they offered, I mean, the offer hasn't increased significantly. The offer, however many years ago, was 100,000. The offer this time was 125,000. We
Then we
went
gotta
back
go.
and said,
So
is
we
there
get
wiggle
for it.
room there? I mean, they consider these good faith partnership type things. Obviously, good point there, Alonzo, the full payment, if the council does want to move forward with the demolition, the full cost is going to be the cost of demo, haul off, shoring up the sides to make it safe, and then the 140. So we can ask them for maybe just a comparable project, what they've seen, if that'd be good information for you.
So I'm hearing this council that we want to table that and come back with more information as to how we want to work with this and make some hardline decision maybe later at that time. Okay? All right. Come on. Yeah.
Do we know how old the bridge is?
Lord.
How old?
Lord.
How
Low.
old age?
Old.
1930s. I talked to Chad Harpole about it, and he said that's as good as he's figured. Plus, there's one just like it at in Hinton that's roughly the same age. So
They already took one out up there.
yeah,
Yeah. Any other question on that? A kind of another update is that we've been working on, as you know, this council's been asking about updating our webpage to make it more friendly, usable and such. Of course, this is where Sarah has James, which is our IT person involved with that, and she's been working diligently on this, and Devin and I talked with her today, and we are moving forward. We have a step-by-step timeline to where we're going to have a design, hopefully in the next, 4 to 6 months, we should have online a more usable, more educated, more, you can click a spot and get the information you need. And again, the main thing is it's user-friendly for everybody, and you're not hunting, patting. You know, one thing I hate about web pages is if I gotta go all over God's creation to get what I want, and I can push a click here and say, oh, this is the information I need. That's what we want here. So, but we'll keep you in tune on that. All right. Okay. At this time, also, we talked about the the capital needs assessment and workshop. I think we gave you two dates. I think was the 18th of January and the 11th, Stacy, if that's correct, are the 2 dates. So we were looking mainly at the 18th at 4 o'clock. Like to have an idea of, is that good for everybody here? So we can go and finalize that and get this on the schedule. And get this.
Perfect for me.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Stone, good for you?
Wonderful, sir.
Ms. Tackett?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Allen?
I'm checking, come back to it.
Kids in school. Guess somebody didn't have the homework.
Yep.
Yep. Okay,
I'm good.
you good? Ms. Hamburg?
I'm looking.
Okay. Mr.
I'm
Hampton?
good.
The 18th?
Yep.
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
All right, back to you.
Yes.
All right, so the 18th of January at 4 o'clock, we will have the capital needs session, work session, where we're going to talk about our capital needs. And in talking a little bit about that, during the last meeting, there was several things that this council wanted to make sure that we were doing and getting information to bring to this council. One was making sure that we do our investments. And tonight, you're going to hear a proposal on that, which you asked us to do. Also, talking a little bit more about not just the investments, and of course, Stacy will give you more detail on that, hopefully later with that. Another thing that this council wanted us to make sure we did was a conversation study and acting on a consultant for the impact fee that this council is so imposed on, and we have gotten that ready to where Devin's going to talk a little bit about that tonight and give you some insight on that. And I think the last thing, if I'm missing something, I think that was it.
The code amendments for the
Yeah.
Revenue Commission.
And the code amendment is one other thing that this council wanted to know, and we'll have some information about that for you tonight. So that being said, we have, this council wanted some information. From the last meeting, we have gotten those done. Also, in the last meeting, I was going to propose a 1% 1% insurance premium, which will regulate for us, bringing in $800,000. And as you see, it's not on the agenda. It's because of the fact that in discussion with council, didn't get a lot of support in getting this done. So we have to revamp and look at some other, hopefully, options. But I want to have this discussion because, I truly believe that in order to move the needle, we have to make tough decisions for people. And I hear what Mr. Miller says about that, and I understand that. I understand that. And, I'm not only just taxing you, I'm also taxing myself, and everybody else is being taxed. It's not a popular thing. When you ask people to come to the table, it's not a popular thing. But the services that we reasonably should be providing for our people, whether it be staff of police, fire, roads, services that this city needs, being the 6th largest city in the state of Kentucky, we need to be doing something. And yes, we got to make tough decisions. But I strongly believe to move the needle is by making those revenues. I presented some revenue ideas to you. So I want to have this conversation. What are you thinking? I'd like to know what you're thinking. Tell me. If this 1% is not a good idea, tell me what you think would work. So we can have some conversation about it. Because I think people want to know exactly what we're thinking. And, if you think there's another better idea, I'm open up to hear that. And so we can bring to this council, to bring to people an idea of what we can do, because we've got to do something here. Because otherwise, we're doing the same thing we've always done, and And when we get to that workshop, come January 18th, some of the capital needs and projects that we want to get done, we're not going to be able to do it because we don't have the revenue streams in place to do it with. So I'm open here to hear your conversation, now. You don't have to wait. Just let's talk about that. I'd really like to know. No opinion?
No, plenty of opinions, I think. It's just getting out there first, and I'll jump out there. So first thing I have to understand is what's the gap we're trying to close? Because we can talk about raising taxes and revenue streams, but we have to clarify what problem are we trying to solve. And we had a $1.3 million deficit to our budget, so that's definitely a gap we have to close. That's probably going to increase in this next budget period with some things that are coming on board that we weren't faced with last fiscal year. So we're probably trying to immediately close a gap of $1.6 million. So we do have the payroll tax from Toyota with their announcement. So that's $700,000, approximately $700,000 that goes to closing that gap. There will be some money coming off of some of the CD investments that we have talked about. Greg done some research on that. You may want to talk about that tonight. So that's another opportunity to close that. So coming off of the water rate increase, the school tax, I think our citizens are pushing back, right? We know that, we hear it, and we're trying to be cognizant of that, aware of that, supportive of that, but at the same time, the mayor is correct. We have to have revenue to do the things that we need and provide for the services for our citizens. So we, I think, need to take that step back and look at what we do have coming in, and if taxes do need to be raised, instead of going at the, from 0 to 3%, maybe looking at incremental steps, maybe 0 to 0.5% for 1 year, and putting this over a 4-year period or something, and then looking at what's the revenue totals from those fiscal years if we stagger the amounts. So I don't think that we're blind to saying we won't ever raise taxes, and Greg had pointed out that there's never a good time to raise taxes, and I think
Sure.
Mark said that, and it's never a good time, but true, we do have to make some tough decisions, but I think we just have to look at where we are, how much are we going to close this gap, and then what's left. What do we need to do over the next 4 or 5 years and kind of spread it out. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And I'm much in agreement with that. I'm in a wait and see. We're just now getting investments where they need to be, which I think is a really good thing, as everybody has heard over the last few months. From me, we also have, like you said, Toyota. We also have the possibility of getting the Revenue Commission with these new ordinances and these new policies. We don't know what our fiscal situation is going to be, and I don't want to raise any taxes prematurely without knowing over the next 6 to 8 months what things look like. Stacy updates us routinely. Oftentimes our gap gets closed. We've had a gap just about every year that I've been following council, and we tend to close it. A lot of places besides Toyota have raised their wages, meaning more occupational taxes are going to come in besides Toyota. So I think we have revenue that's coming in. This impact fee is going to make a difference. It's not going to be in the general fund, but it is going to make a difference in some ways for the health of our infrastructure and things. So I don't want to make any decisions with tax increases at the moment.
I'm in agreement with Alonzo and Willow. Let me expand on closing the gap on our current deficit. Yes, we're with the pay increase from Toyota, and we're going to have investment opportunities to help that. But let me just preface that the investment opportunities that we have, these are one-time things. This is not reoccurring revenue to us. So it's going to help this fiscal year, but it's not the answer to everything. Interest rates are high right now. You'll hear later that one of the CDs is 5.25%. From everything I'm looking at and I've researched, they're anticipating those staying about the same through the first half of the year. But those will eventually come down, especially with a softening of the economy. They're going to lower those rates. So this revenue that we're going to have coming in on these CDs, it's going to fluctuate. And I really wouldn't anticipate it going any higher. I would anticipating it decreasing throughout the year. So we just need to be aware of that. Again, like I've said in the past, no, it's not easy raising taxes, but this council was elected to do the right thing for the city and to maintain safety. And doing that, we have to have the necessary funds, which we don't. We haven't over the past, ever since I've been on council, which is 3 years now. We've run those deficits, and we can't continue to do that. So it's very important that we balance what we think we need against what we have, and we move based on that. And I think a lot of the revenue options we're talking about, here and there, there's, I guess, an expression of death by 1,000 pecks. We want to do the things that are going to be significant. They're going to move the needle, like the mayor said. But a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, people get really tired of that, and I'm hearing that. I hear it every day. So, but again, as the mayor said too, we're not only raising taxes on everybody, we're raising taxes on ourselves too. So, that's just my 2 cents worth.
So my opinion on that is that I don't disagree, and we just raised it 2%, and people are feeling it, and we did some significant stuff with that. But over a period of years, we're faced with this every year. And when you say deficit and a gap, last year we had 27 million and we had a gap. This year we had 34 million and we had a gap, but we fixed that gap. Because Stacy, I have said over and over, she is very conservative when she gives us numbers, so that when we get there, we've got that money. And also with Toyota, we have those people, but keep in mind that everybody, all fast foods, speedways, all of those are raising people's income.
Right.
They're raising their hourly rate. So that's other revenue coming in that we're not aware of yet because we haven't seen the numbers for next year. All I'm advocating for is let's see the numbers for next year. Let's see if we do shut that gap. And if we do, then we don't have to raise insurance premium tax to fill that gap. Just to kind of, like Willow said, a wait and see. It's okay to be patient and wait. We're not hurting. Our city is in a very good shape, and we have money in the bank, which we've not had before.
Connie, I agree with you totally. On the closing the gap, we've been able to close it in the past, but remember, we've done that through not hiring or not being able to fulfill
Positions.
our positions.
I didn't get to go there, but I know exactly what you're saying.
That was probably the most significant way that we were able to close those gaps was by not fulfilling the hiring for police and fire and other departments.
And
But
I understand
I
that.
don't think we're going to have that this year because it sounds like, with the Chief Allgood and Chief Thompson, sorry.
That
Thank
other
you.
chief over there.
The other guy.
Yeah, the other chief.
The other chief.
It sounds like they're about ready, to fill all their vacancies.
Which has been a goal, and which is
Yes,
what we've done.
it has
Given
been.
the raises and stuff that we've
It
done,
has
we've
been. So,
expected that.
I don't think, for this fiscal year, we can really look at counting on that to help close the gap.
I'm not. I wasn't. I was saying that people other than Toyota have gotten raises.
Right. And I agree with
And
that.
even the money coming in off of the CDs and stuff will close the gap for
Agreed.
this next next year.
But
it will.
we can't count on it.
No,
Very well.
I'm not counting on it, but I'm gonna tell you what. We also have $80 million of infrastructure for stormwater that needs to be having attention too.
Absolutely.
So there's that. So, and we've paid Strain for years. We need to give them direction to do the next best thing. It's gonna be 15, 16 months before we could do anything. So there's that. There's many things, but at the end of the day, the city is in not dire straits. The city is doing really well because we have great leadership and directors that are doing what they're doing, and I'm very grateful for every one of them.
I agree with that totally.
So that's just where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Mayor,
yeah, go.
I didn't know.
I'm done.
Okay.
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 If you weren't, I apologize for cutting you off. I'm listening, I've been listening to every comment so far, and I want to save my comments for council comments, because I want to hear one item on the agenda before I make my comments, but I want to come at this from a different angle. Might not be the popular angle, but I'm going to come at it from a different angle, but I want to wait until council comments.
Okay. Like, again, thank you for your comment. Again, I think this is healthy. And I think that, people, our citizens know where we stand on issues, and that we're just not just, here we're putting it out there and there's no conversation about it. Again, I emphasize that, it's more we can get people to know what we feel is good or what we don't like about it, what we can work together to come with something that will be good for our citizens going forward. That's what we want, and that's what the purpose of this. I wanted to make sure that everybody was good with that. I think I had one other item I want to update, but I guess I'll come back to that a little later once I find out what that is. Okay.
Mayor, it might have been addressing the council meeting on December 25th.
Yes, thank you.
That the council.
That was it.
We
So,
typically cancel.
because of some holiday called Christmas, we're going to have to cancel that one, okay? So I know that if I decide to have a meeting, probably
You'll
won't
be
be in
having it by
office. I will
yourself.
be out of office the 26th of January. Of December. So we're going to cancel that meeting.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yes, you need a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to cancel our last meeting of December.
Motion is made by Ms. Tackett, second by Mr. Hampton. Are there further discussion and/or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that motion carried, so we will not have a meeting on the 25th of December. That way, everybody can be happy, get all the toys you want, and so on. Like I said, if you get on the parade with Santa, like I said, you can get in good with him, like I'm gonna do, so that might be helpful. Because I'm asking my wife for a few things, and she says no, so Santa's my next hope. All right? Okay, let's move on. Next on the agenda, we have the committee reports. I got finance, and I got public works. So will that finance go first? Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
We met on November 20th. This was a special call meeting. Those in attendance were myself, Councilmember Allen, CAO Golden, Finance Director Clark, and we had one from the public to attend. The topics we discussed, of course, we approved the minutes from the meeting, and then we discussed the mayor's revenue plans, which did include the insurance premium and also the franchise fees of gas and electric. The development impact fee, which you will hear tonight, the contract will be presented to council. That approximate cost is around $90,000, and the study will include the areas of police, fire, water, transportation, et cetera. The fiscal agent update, we need to have an operating and budget priority so the fiscal agent can help us so they can advise council on what we need to be doing. And like we just set the date for that for January 18th at 4 o'clock. On the investment side, we reviewed these, got the fiscal agent input, and we will hear that tonight as well. And then we adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Public Works.
Yes, sir. Committee attending meetings, Mayor Jenkins, myself, Council Millie Butcher Conway, CAO Devin Golden, Robert Bruin, Eddie Hightower. We called the meeting to order. We approved the minutes of October 18th, 2023. Robert talked about getting pricing for a purchase of dump trucks. We've looked into leasing, so he's getting a couple of different ideas. He's going to bring that to us soon. It might be after the first of the year, if not our last one in January or December. The sign for parking lot on Morales Way has been installed. I asked about the Colony subdivision entrance into US 25. Eddie Hightower said that they were currently designing the entrance and are submitting a permit application to the state. We may not have to move that pole after all.
Okay.
Would be good. CL Golden said that they are still working on the brush collection ordinance, and hopefully we'll have something in the near future. Eddie also reported they are working on an RFP for the design of the drainage ditch on South Broadway. And Councilperson Conway reported on the beautification subcommittee. The committee's met 4 times and is making a list of projects that they want to recommend for completion. I'm sure y'all have seen them out working. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you.
Maybe a correction on the finance committee. Greg, I think you said we had a special call
Yes,
meeting for November 20th. That was
Yes,
not a special call.
yeah, I discovered that, yeah,
Okay.
thank you for pointing that out.
All right, thank you. All right, next we had GMWSS. We have the Water Solutions Limited. We have Chase come.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 items for your consideration tonight. First, as you said, Water Solutions Unlimited. This is a purchase order in the amount of $11,700, $11700, and this is for 4,500 gallons of bleach, which is our primary disinfectant at the water treatment plant. This volume will last between 1 and 2 months, depending on demand. These prices to get this price, this was done by quotes. We have our annual chemical bid, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but this one was done just by calling around. That's how we got the lowest price, so we are recommending that for your consideration.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Everybody, let's try this one more time. Okay, so we can get it here. So, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion made by
And
Mr.
second.
Hamilton. Mr. Hampton, excuse me. Second by
Willow.
Willow. Thank you.
Council.
Ms. Hamrick, second. Are there questions and/or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. Next, Judy Construction.
Yep, this is the monthly pay app for our wastewater treatment plant 1 upgrade and expansion. This is for Judy Construction in the amount of $981,170.87, 981,170.87. This was work completed in October. This brings us to 63% complete on our budget, and that's broken down. We've got 40% work complete, 23% roughly in stored materials. So everything's still moving very quickly on the treatment plant, and we're recommending this for your approval.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Go ahead.
Motion.
All right, motion made by Ms. Tackett, second made by Mr. Stone. Are there further discussion and/or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. Next, chemical bid of 2023/2024.
Yep, this is our annual chemical bid, our unit price contracts that we issue. We do this to ensure we're meeting procurement guidelines, but in addition to doing this exercise once a year, as I said, with how much the market has fluctuated and how people, vendors sometimes honor these prices and sometimes they don't, especially in the last 2 years. Just to ensure that we're getting the best price, we still, as I said in item A, we're still calling around, getting quotes. I don't see that changing, but we want to have this just so we make sure we've satisfied our procurement goal. And if this is the lowest price and it's honored, this is what we will use. So.
Do I have a motion?
Motion, Mayor.
Motion made.
Second.
You're quick today. Motion made by Mr. Allen, second by Ms. Tackett. Are there further questions and/or comment? Yes, ma'am.
And so these prices, you're saying that they don't have to honor them, but we assume that these will be the prices for a year?
This is a year contract that we've approved through this bid, but over the last 2 years, whether the vendors will honor this or not, it's been hit or miss.
Well, didn't they go up significantly, Chase? If I
This year,
remember correctly.
much more stable.
Yeah.
Two of them went up, the rest of them were either at the same or slightly below, but the, one of the two that went up is one of the chemicals we use the most, so it's a lot less volatile today than it was last year and the year before.
That's
So there's
good.
no way to lock it in.
One would think this locks it in, but I guess it would only be enforceable if we wanted to chase them in the legal system, which we're not going to chase somebody down every time. We're going to instead do this. Hopefully this gets us our best price. Hopefully it will be honored. If it's not, we're still calling around with every purchase we make to make sure we're getting the best price that day that we need it.
So we are just kind of like at their
all you can ask
mercy.
for.
You know, whatever they decide they're going to price us,
If
that's the
anybody
way.
knows a better way, I'm
Yeah.
open to any and all suggestions, but this is the reality we've been living in.
Well,
But if you call somebody and their price is better than you're contracting for, you're not bound to go with this contract. You can still.
And we
so-
make that
so it's both.
clear in
It
our.
works both
Yeah,
ways.
it goes
yes.
both ways.
Okay.
So
so make sure I understand what you're saying, that, you know, we have a kind of a contract and that, but if they decide they want to do a higher price, then we look around, and if we find a lower price, we go with them, and so we're not, okay.
Yes,
Got
sir.
it. Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, Chase, are we still on task or target for first quarter of 2025?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And still working on our drone update video.
Okay. All right. All right, we had a motion made, second, and had discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. And before I turn over to Chief Administrative Officer Devin Golden, one other thing we'll remind you of that we talked a little bit today is an update on City Hall, is that we are working to try to get them to come and give us an update at the December meeting. So hopefully we'll get them up here and they can kind of tell us where we stand, what's going on with that, and so the council and the public will know where we are. Okay? All right?
I do have a question, but I just want to know, who interviewed the paper?
I did not.
Yeah, how did they
I
get
did
that
not.
information that we found out in the paper that there's,
I've said in a council meeting, and I know we've talked about it in a couple committee meetings, that in the course of that project, and I think this was part of the update at the last meeting where y'all were kind of provided a paper update on the project, that in the demolition process, they've located load-bearing beams in places they didn't expect, and vice versa. They're working on revising the scope. They've not given us any indication that how this will impact cost. I'm optimistic that it's going to be a positive thing. I think it's going to be palatable, but no, we don't have the specs on the redesign. One of the areas that's going to need to be redesigned in a way is council chambers. So we've made it clear that one of the main purposes of this project was to expand council chambers and encourage public participation. So that they understand that redesign process needs to be in front of the council. So I don't know if that'll be ready for the December 11th meeting, but they are on notice that we want a year-end update and have marked their calendars to present at the December 11th meeting. So
That's good.
even if that scope is not complete and that report is not complete with an update on where this takes us, they will be doing an update at the December 11th council meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Just one more question. So if they don't have that scope done, without calling a special call council meeting or anything like that, do you think that we could have it emailed to us before Christmas or around Christmas?
The scope?
Yeah, just for us to have to
Like
look
just an
at.
update in terms of,
Yeah.
yeah, if they have a revised, I mean, it'll have to be approved by the council, because even, I know change order's a cuss word, but even if it's a deductive change order, the council will have to approve it. So,
Just
if
kinda
they.
heads up.
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Thanks.
If and when we get that, we'll get it out, but I'm hopeful, we're kind of in that range of where they thought they'd have that that design completed. So I'm hopeful that it can come to the council on December 11th, but I'll keep y'all posted.
Thank you.
All right, any other? Next, we have the Chief Administrative Officer, the municipal order approving contract with, is it Tishner?
Yes, Tischler Bice. I know you all have seen the qualifications. We had a scoring committee get together. We had a couple of really good qualifications packets. Tischler Bice was selected as the most qualified firm. We've worked back and forth with them. As you can see here, a not to exceed fee of $90,400. They called it a la carte, which I guess is a good way to put it, but the way, if you look in the exhibits, the way they have mapped out the pricing, there are some tasks that inherently they're kind of base costs that go across the project. But if we would get into the process and the council would say, you know, we don't want to pursue transportation facilities impact fees. So you see that line item is $16,400. If we said, hey, we really want to pull that out of the scope, we can strike that cost. So a handful of those items can be pulled out. I think you all will want to see all of those. I think we've been really intentional about the ones that are included. And you can see the proposed project timeline, the schedule as well. So you can see that task 8 kind of wraps up, tasks 7 and 8 wrap up around May. And so, like we said, if the council has that comfort level, this could be ready for the next fiscal year. Or if this needs to, this is a report they're preparing. Ultimately, the decision to either implement or not implement the fee is the council's. So once that report is in our hands, what the council does with it is up to the council to discuss. So glad to take any questions about the proposal and about timeline and things like that. As you'll see in the municipal order, Georgetown Municipal, 2 of the line items will directly benefit them, the water and wastewater side. So those line items, along with a portion of the base cost, the board has been notified of that cost, and they're supportive. Obviously, it's not included in their budget, but they've got professional services bandwidth to participate in this contract and reimburse us for $30,000 of the full fee.
I have a couple questions. Task 5, determine need for credits to be applied against capital costs. If you could explain that a little bit. To me, does this mean that we could give them a credit for the fee if they say 10% of the houses that we intend to build would be low income?
Yeah,
and then they could have a credit on the impact fee structure.
So I look at the credit, so I'm going to compare this to the stormwater utility fee.
Yeah.
I'll use Toyota because they're an easy example. They do a lot of stormwater mitigation measures that they've invested in on site. It would be punitive to make them pay X multiplier if they've already invested in those improvements. So if we've got, and they're going to have to flesh this out, but they talk about the double payment situation. If a development has already invested in certain portions of the roadway infrastructure off-site or things like that, it wouldn't make sense to make them pay the entire fee. I'm trying to think of other ones that this would make sense on. I can't think of one where you can get a credit for police and fire personnel required or things like that. But if a developer or a builder or whatever it may be has taken a measure to already address the impact of their development as it pertains to a certain line item, they would have a system whereby they wouldn't have to pay as much of a fee. I have to guess these are semi-limited, but I think you have to have it. It's a legal, I think this is one of the most important things to have in order to defend the fee, because if somebody comes to the table and says, why am I paying X amount when look at all the measures I've already taken to mitigate this impact to you? So I admittedly don't know a ton about it. I look at it similar to the stormwater utility fee credit, though.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if that could be determinative of.
Yeah, I know there's a component in here that they do address how
housing.
This impacts affordability, because obviously
that's
developers are
potential
going to pass
impact on
this.
housing affordability was my other question. How would that work?
My guess is that conversation surrounds, and it's probably the balancing act of it, them saying, with this much of a fee, look at what's going to be passed on, look at the, I mean, because that's exactly how everything works, right? The development community is gonna pass it on to the builders are gonna pass it on to the consumers. That's, you know,
And so they'll let us know how much more they're gonna have to charge for the houses if they have this impact fee.
my guess would be that they would have kind of a scaled approach where they would say, you know, this is what you could do, but here's what we see the impact being on housing affordability. We can most certainly ask, that's a good question, whether there's the opportunity to provide that credit based on housing affordability. I just don't know how that ties into the nexus conversation about the fee and the actual
Yeah.
cost of services and infrastructure necessitated by the development.
Yeah.
So, it's a good question.
All right. At this time, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made by Ms. Hambrick, second made by Mr. Allen. Other questions and comments? No.
As a follow-up to Mrs. Sanders' question, do we have a time frame, once we vote on this, if it is approved moving forward, do we have a time frame on when we anticipate hearing back from
Test or bias?
You mean in terms of having the full report developed? Yeah, so while Mark's looking at that, you know, the project schedule, it shows initiation data acquisition in December, so that will be them reaching out to us to start collecting the data they need to get started. We're working on scheduling their first on-site visit for the first week in January, so we'll be coordinating with all the relevant departments, obviously GMWSS, police, fire, Eddie and Robert in terms of roads. Planning and zoning is really critical in this process. So we're boots on the ground getting started on this with their first visit in January. You'll see there are there are a handful of presentations to the council. There's some review committee meetings. They've kind of tied some of their meetings with staff to presentations to the council and the public. So that, for that context, the first in-person meeting will be in January with the expectation that kind of their report will have a bow on it around May.
So best case scenario, if this continues to move forward, do we anticipate this potentially coming back to the council to decide if we're going to move forward or we're not going to move forward before the beginning of the next budget year?
It can. I mean, it shows the final impact fee report in May.
Yeah.
Now, Stacy can tell you that she and the mayor are going to be they're going to be pretty much finished with the budget at that time.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that we can't take this into consideration after the fact. I mean, it can be, after the report's given to the council, it can be implemented on your all's time frame. But I think, I don't know, Stacy, my assumption would be you and the mayor are going to work through the budget, just assuming status quo.
Yeah. So I think the big timeline was, as Chase just mentioned, was wanting this online before the sewer capacity comes online at the
Right.
beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
Or that first 6 months of 2025. So that's kind of been our goal, is having before any more developments are approved after sewer capacity comes on board,
Yeah.
to make sure we don't miss those developments.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Mark, are you done? Originally, we were wondering whether or not there were legal issues with impact and development fees. I assume that the way that this is being laid out here, they're sure that all of this is legal?
They are going to be, so I've said this before, but I'll say it one more time just to make sure I'm candid. There's no enabling legislation in Kentucky for development impact fees. There's no legislation prohibiting development impact fees. So a lot of the states where you've seen these implemented more widely, there's specific legislation that authorizes it. Now, in our case, there's not. There are a handful of cities in Kentucky that have imposed impact fees. I don't know whether theirs have been challenged. I know that they didn't implement those fees through this kind of a process where we're working with a consultant that has implemented them nationwide, and their fees have been challenged and upheld on nationwide case law. So I use that nexus word. There's, the nexus between the development and the needs.
Right.
Because, like you said earlier, this cannot be general fund revenue. It's going to be very clearly earmarked. The timeline under which it's spent and for which it's spent is very specific. And all of that plays into whether it's defensible. It's not just implementing it, it's how you expend the funds.
Yeah.
It's very heavily scrutinized, but they have been, fees that they have developed have been challenged, and they've never been,
Okay, I guess
they've
that's,
always been upheld.
yep.
And one good thing about having this in play is that, you know, this money is actually earmarked, as she said, for specific things. And how this helps us on the general end is that, you know, right now, if we didn't have this, if something was to happen in one of our systems, you know, development, we got to pay for that.
Right.
And it comes out of general fund. You know, a good example, you know, I had to put $290,000 on a road that collapsed out there by Walmart, you know, going right in. So we're going to have unexpected things happen. But at least having this in play where, you know, if this was to happen, that money's earmarked for that. So therefore, we're not dealing in general fund to take care of it, if that makes sense.
And that's the part that the consultant is, I think, the most critical part for them is saying, you know, this isn't like a rainy day fund.
Right.
It's, you identified the costs ahead of time, and that's how you came to this fee. And so that's why, you know, some of the things you read, is that money can't just sit there and wait for
Right.
when you need it. You've already identified why you need it, because X development yielded however many thousand additional people to protect, or things like that. So that's why, you know, it's above our heads, and it would be a disservice to not approach it this way. So I think it's going to be good to get the report. I think it's going to be good to engage throughout the process. You can see the storyboard presentation on fee options. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for the community to engage. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some interest in this from a lot of different parties. So,
So Devin, is this just for new development?
yes.
Okay, so stormwater could go hand in hand with this for things that are already needing to be fixed?
No.
I mean, I'm just saying,
In the future.
that's wonderful and great that developable impact fees is probably something that should be implemented, probably should have been looked at 25 years ago, but.
You bring up an important point. We asked them in our meeting, we said, you know, one thing that we see that's not included in here is stormwater, and that comes up a lot. And they said that in the development impact fee world, stormwater it's more a sins of the past issue.
Exactly.
Which is exactly like you said. And they said most communities just have a stormwater utility fee because they know those problems have existed for decades and decades, and any stormwater component of this could only address the stormwater needs necessitated by new development. And actually, I can't take any credit for it, but you were on the council for it years ago. The council adopted a stormwater maintenance best management practices ordinance that any new development now, commercial or residential, they have to essentially encumber that property in perpetuity for maintenance of the stormwater facilities. So
Right.
we've taken a lot of steps to make sure that those issues don't continue to compound. So stormwater is one that I think developers would say, well, I've already had to install this stormwater system, I've already had to enter into this agreement and do all these things. I think they would be ripe for credits in those
Exactly.
situations. So they basically said, stormwater's not always a good option in these, and so.
Do you know, and you can just tell me later, I just want you to take a note, is how much more would it cost us to have Strand to go to the next level to,
$199,000
so, okay. there
to
you
take
go.
that,
Take it to the next
to
level.
develop for every parcel what their payment would be. So we have that proposal in hand if
Yeah.
you would like to, I sent it out a while ago, but I can send it again if
I'm
it's
just
something
saying
you'd like to
that
see.
we've pursued it, and moving forward on the impact fees, they've been talked about for years too. But the bottom line is, like you said, the sins of the past. And, I mean, I just think it's something that we probably really ought to look at. That's my opinion.
And that'll be, I mean, I'm sure, you know, I know Greg touched on this, but it's, the work session will be both capital and operating needs. So, like I said, if you have items to put on that agenda, send them to the mayor or me, and we can make sure to have those on the agenda. But that's something that, you know, you can talk about if that's the top priority. Maybe that proposal does come back to the council.
Okay, that sounds good, David.
Thank you.
So is there any more discussion and/or questions? All right, those are in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. That the record reflect that the motion passed. Next, the first reading of the amendment to GSCRC related code provision, sponsor Alonzo Allen and Greg Hampton.
I won't talk about this too long before Tracy starts reading. Like to acknowledge Jessica Brown from GMWSS, or not GMWSS, the Revenue Commission, taking the lead on this. So she and I worked back and forth, and then Emily jumped right on board and reviewed it as well. So we had quite a team on this, but these are just all the provisions that the council's been requesting, and I think we'll go into the new year with some additional tools in their belt. So it's good.
An ordinance amending Chapter 36 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances regarding occupational license taxes. Summary 1, amends 36 through 56B to require current business license or copy thereof to be prominently displayed at each place of business or to be available and produced upon request if no physical business location exists. 2, create section 36 through 56I to establish business registration requirements, including the posting of a $275 cash bond with the city for general contractors as defined therein. 3, create section 36 through 56J to establish business registration requirements, including the posting of a $275 cash bond with the city for any person or business entity conducting activity in the city that does not meet the definition of a transient business and who does not own or lease a physical business location within the city for a period of over 6 uninterrupted months. 4, amend section 36 through 69D to provide for the electronic submittal of annual reconciliation documentation by employers with greater than or equal to 100 employees to the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission, and to further authorize the Commission to prescribe, require the returns, forms, or reports to be filed, and to define the way each is to be filed. 5, create section 36 through 69F to exempt the federal government from the requirement to withhold, report, and pay the occupational license tax, and to further establish tax withholding requirements for all such federal government employees. 6, create section 36 through 70D to establish theft by failure of an employer to remit payroll withholding taxes as a criminal offense, and to further authorize the city and the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission to pursue all available legal remedies to pursue violations. 7, create section 36 through 72L to allow for the cancellation, termination, or suspension of a contract with a contractor or vendor determined by the Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission to be non-compliant with city ordinances and requirements. 8, creates a new section of Chapter 36 to allow for the suspension or revocation of a business license and to further establish notice requirements in the event of suspension or revocation. 9, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication according to law. Full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 629 North Broadway, Georgetown, Kentucky 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time November 27, 2023.
All right.
If we had to, if this item ultimately passes at our next meeting, second reading, the next meeting will be this passes. Do we have an idea at this point on when we will probably start to see the results of this? I mean, it's probably going to be late this year.
Oh, you know, like,
2025.
well, the issue with is that, you know, we don't know how much revenue is lost, Mitch, because, you know, the big problem is not money that we think left on the table. It's actually, the problem has been people not filing. You know, so they don't know who they filed. So if they don't file, you know, there's no way to us to measure what we're gonna have.
Right.
So, you know, to give you that, you know, I don't know. Hopefully, I'm on, of course, as one of the commissioners, and she'll give us, hopefully, Scott will give us a update of some revenue. They do give us some, you know, how much new money they collect with that. So I would say within anywhere from 9 to 12 months, maybe. That's just the best guess, you know. We might see something that
There's a
might be no,
reason, there's a reason I'm asking that question, and I'll wait for the comments.
Okay.
Because that's, if it's gonna be, again, you
it's
guys-
gonna be a while.
Well, and I mean, this will be effective immediately, and it provides those tools. I know you heard Scott talking about that culture of compliance that we're working on, and I think this, the city ordinance, I'm gonna share this with the county. I don't know if they've already taken one for first reading, but I'll share this with Cam in case he'd like to utilize it for the county provisions. But it's kind of just sending a message too, that while we are pursuing revenue options, we're also trying to tie up loose ends and make sure we're giving ourselves the ability to close those gaps where people are supposed to be filing and very well may be filing a net profit, and we don't know about that net profit. I think the biggest one that's going to move the needle, and as Mayor mentioned at the last meeting, we're waiting on an Attorney General's opinion on it, is we'll come back and amend this to authorize publication of a non-compliant business list. And I think that will be the measure that moves the needle in terms of that delinquency rate of 51%. I think we'll immediately see improvement to that when people's names are on the line. So hopeful that opinion comes back. I don't know timelines for Attorney General's opinions on questions that are posed like this, but I think we'll get that in hand and come right back for an amendment. And I think that's the measure that you can expect to immediately impact.
Well, the 51% non-compliant was shocking to me, so I'm hopeful that it's going to be a positive for the city.
Sure.
So when the city and the county put in the paper, people that are delinquent on their city and county taxes, it's a city ordinance, and it doesn't have any,
I think that's statutory. I think you're authorized to do that by statute. Jessica said she's done some research and doesn't see any reason why we can't lawfully do this, but the only other communities in the state that are doing it just kind of didn't ask. They're just doing it by policy. They don't have it in their code or anything. We would do it through an ordinance to put people on notice, and we'd have a period where people have the opportunity to remedy it before we put them on the list, essentially. So we want to do it in a way that isn't harmful, but also that is going to increase our ability to know exactly what we're actually owed.
And usually the people that we end up probably putting in there are those people who just not going to do it anyway. Those are the ones that have been filing. So
Well, that's true.
we just want to make sure that if they're not going to do that, that they can't do business in Georgetown.
And Devin, and you may not know, if somebody appeals a decision of the Revenue Commission, what's the appeal process?
I would have to pull up our ordinance. Actually, the council passed an appeals process ordinance, I think 5 years ago. But I have to pull up the exact language.
Because I know in the past, and I've heard from a few business owners, that they were told that the appeals process is the mayor, the county judge, the school board, and the superintendent, and Scott. And that's the final say. Is there nothing that they can do beyond that? Because they were, they felt that they were in the right, but didn't have no other recourse. Is there still another that they can appeal to?
I think the appeal to the commission is the recourse. I'd have to pull up the ordinance, and I'll be glad to do that.
Okay.
I know that we have had some people come on and appeal some things, and we either say yes, they did. And usually Scott's really good about, working with people, and if something's not right, he makes it right. But if something where he says, a lot of the appeals that we decline is because people didn't follow the procedure. They had a chance to do that, and they didn't do that. And, one good example is, they said they put it in the mail. Well, do you have proof of it? And if they show proof that it was mailed out, they give them credit for it. So there's a process with that. Yeah.
Okay, I was just looking to see if they're unhappy with that decision and they still feel that they are in the right and being told tough luck. Is there another step up?
Yeah, but once again though, they are very good about making sure that anytime we're looking at stuff like that, that we're giving them the benefit of the doubt, but we also need to have proof that they said they did what they said they did. Because somebody can say they did it and they have no proof of it, and then if we start just say, well, then look where we're at. So
Number 6, Mayor, and Devin, creates Section 36 through 70D to establish theft by failure of an employee to remit payroll withholding taxes as a criminal offense. And so how would we handle that? I mean, is that going to go to criminal litigation and a court situation, or what? There's
Yeah,
a
we
lot
would
of
turn it over
teeth
to the
in
county
it.
attorney's office, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, theft by failure to make a lawfully required disposition is essentially, usually the case is that an employer withholds payroll taxes from their employee's paycheck but doesn't remit them to the taxing jurisdiction, which is literally taking from their employee.
Yeah.
And this one I hadn't thought of, you see section 4 here, talking about the only one that's exempted is the federal government, so those employees pay it. So apparently, which I didn't know this, one main issue they have is collection from postal workers, because their employer's not withholding it, they're responsible for remitting it themselves.
Oh, wow.
So I hadn't thought about that one.
Yeah.
But yes, anything that is a misdemeanor, we'll turn them all to the county attorney's office. If it exceeds their jurisdiction, they'll send it to the Commonwealth's attorney.
Thank you.
All right. Number 10, dispatch. Municipal order approving purchase of console.
I'll step in for Lieutenant Moore if you have any questions on this one, but this will just improve their efficiency, response times, especially in critical events, severe weather. And we did budget for this item, and it is a sole source through our current radio provider at AMK, and he has outlined why that's a sole source purchase.
I make a motion, Mayor.
Motion is made by Ms. Tackett, second by Ms. Brent. Are there further questions and/or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. Next, back up again. Finance, municipal order approving central bank investment proposal. This is something that the council asked us to look at, and we bring to you, and we're doing that. So here we are. Stacy.
Yes, just to give you an update on our process, Devin and I met with our fiscal agent on the 14th, so the day after the last council meeting, and we talked to them about this, and they were the ones that recommended that they felt we could put $20 million in a 30-day CD. That way it's not fully liquid, but every 30 days we have the opportunity, if needed, to cash out that CD and lower the amount if we need it, so it's still accessible. So beyond that, they suggested that we talk to our current depository, where our current checking account is, which is Central Bank, and to see what they could offer us in terms of a checking account that offered more money. So you'll see on there, Central Bank has recommended a non-personal money market plus account where the balance of our funds will go. So we're going to keep about $1 million. It may fluctuate a little bit, but around $1 million in our day-to-day checking account. So that's the one all the deposits will go in, all the daily checks are written out of, payrolls paid out of. We will put $20 million in the 30-day CD. The current rate for that is 5.25. Of course, as it renews every 30 days, it's going to renew at whatever the current market rate is. So that rate will fluctuate from month to month. The current rate on the Money Market Plus is 3.5%. And right now, that would start out with approximately $12.6 million. And then that account only allows 6 withdrawals per month. So it's somewhat liquid, but what we'll do is on a weekly basis, I'll see how much we need for payroll, for checks, and if there's not enough in the regular checking, then we'll make a transfer from the money market to the regular checking to cover. So that was the proposal from Central Bank, and then of course, once I got the proposal back from Central Bank, I called our fiscal agent back up, talked to them, and they thought it all sounded like something we could handle, and we will evaluate month to month, especially once we start making payments on City Hall, because we've not received any pay applications on City Hall yet. And then, as we mentioned before, January 18th, we'll have our work session for capital and operating budget priorities. As Devin mentioned, please send the mayor and Devin any priorities that you individually have, and we will put those all on the agenda for discussion. And we'll talk about how those will impact our budget and what our budget looks like. Obviously, we can go ahead and start talking about what revenues might look like next year, what operating and capital needs we have. And all of that will give our fiscal agent the groundwork needed to figure out what we might want an initial bond issue to look like, if that's something council wants to entertain. Certainly for City Hall, but as well as any other capital priorities that come out of that session. So,
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Hampton, second made by Mr. Allen.
I have a question.
yes.
I wanted to ask you, once this is approved, how long will it take to go ahead and start doing this?
I'll contact Kim Marshall tomorrow, so as quickly as she can get the paperwork drawn up, we have our authorized, I think we have 5 authorized signers, so any of the 2 authorized signers can go down and sign the paperwork. I would think, for the CD, I would think we could do that fairly quickly, and then with the money market, it still should probably be within a day or 2. I wouldn't expect it to take.
Can you give us an update through an email?
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
So, any other further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. Next is the Human Resources. It's the first reading of the amendment to Personnel Ordinance, Willow Hambrick and Todd Stone. Just to refresh your memory, I think this is with the SROs that the school is going to be paying for.
An ordinance amending Section 2-111 of the Code of Ordinances regarding personnel. Summary 1, amend Section 2-111 subsection C of the Code of Ordinances to increase the number of school resource officers positions from 3 to 6 within the police department. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination at the City Clerk's Office, 629 North Broadway, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time November 27th, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Next is the number 13, Police Department Resolution Accepting the Violence Against Women's Act Grant.
Yes, so this is, I think, our 3rd year receiving this grant funding. We have an officer dedicated to crimes specific to women and children, and that program's gone really well. Obviously, the funding is not sufficient to completely cover this officer's functions, but compared to the other sources of revenue through DOJ, I think we got a pretty good allocation, 13,000 shy of what we requested, but a lot of these funding sources decline over the years, and I think this one's held pretty well.
All right. Motion made by Ms. Tackett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Ms. Hambrick. Are there further questions and or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. All right. Next, we have council comments, and I'm going to start with Mr. Showalter first.
I would ask for a little bit of patience. This might take a couple minutes. I apologize. I don't want to take up a lot of time, so I'll jump right in. Had an incident, personal incident that happened about a week and a half ago, and my whole outlook on things has really changed from that time up until today. And I've listened to the comments tonight. I go back and I think about the comments and the study that Mayor Prather did in the previous administration. Taking in all the comments, I've listened to every comment that's been made, every revenue initiated discussion so far this calendar year. And Mr. Miller, I listened to your comments tonight, and I did read your email that you sent out just a few days ago as well. So just want to make sure we do that.
Is your mic on?
There you go. Sorry. We just thinking overall of the needs of this city. you know, we got some tough choices ahead. We really do. Whether we want to admit it or not, we really do. And, you know, Chief Allgood, I could get this information wrong, but, you know, again, correct me if I do. You know, we've talked for several years now about trying to create a traffic unit in our police department that goes after speeders, or, you know, looks for people that are speeding, running red lights, reckless driving, whatever you want to call it. We talked about it for several years under Chief Ballsey and now you, Chief Allgood. You know, I believe right now we're 10 officers short, according to FBI standards, where we should be versus what we have budgeted right now. And for every police officer or fire department personnel that we hire per person, when you look at salary, benefits, retirement, it's over $100,000 a year for one person. That doesn't include the police cruiser that you got to put that police officer in. That's a significant cost. And if you added 10 police officers, which is where we should be, that's over $1 million per year. We're not talking about one-time money. We're talking about an annual ongoing expense. You know, stormwater, we had Strand here back in the spring. We talked about one specific item on Broadway. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one bid or one proposal that was going to cost over $15 million to fix that one issue. One issue. That doesn't include all the other stormwater issues that we have throughout the city limits right now. And they exist. They exist. In most, if not all subdivisions, there is a stormwater issue. You know, back in the spring, and again, I'm not being critical, but, you know, we took a vote on building a new fire station. And it was I think it was a 4-3 vote to slow down. But if, you know, we've talked about that. I've talked to several magistrates, and at this point, it doesn't seem like there's any agreement to eventually try to merge the fire departments. And if that's not what we're going to do, as the population continues to grow, we're going to have to look at possibly building a new fire station. And if we do that, it's going to take 12 new firefighters to staff that fire station. 12 new ones at over $100,000 per person. That, you know, you're looking at over $1 million there. Plus buying a fire truck, an apparatus, which could cost anywhere from $800,000 to $1.2 million. Plus the construction cost to build the fire station. You know, we're talking about Bridge Street tonight, a bridge that's almost 100 years old. And again, I know people are going to be critical of what I said earlier. That's fine. But really and truthfully, that bridge, for nothing else than safety reasons, ought to come down. And a new one ought to be built, whether it's a pedestrian bridge or one that will handle vehicles. That's going to cost money. I mean, I could keep going and going and going. And again, I see both sides here, I do. You know, I think Mr. Allen said it earlier that none of us want to have a discussion on raising taxes. None of us do. I don't want to. You know, I can't control what the school system did earlier this year when they raised property taxes. That was beyond my control. I had no say-so in that. None of us did. Not a single person up here controlled what the school board did earlier this year. You know, the water company did, we had to take an increase. We voted on it. This council, unfortunately, inherited an issue that the previous council last year pushed off to this year. And again, I'm not being critical, but it happened. We can't change that. But we have a responsibility, we have a responsibility for our city employees, and we have a responsibility for the citizens of this community when they call 911, whether it's for police or fire, that somebody's there if you're a victim, you're hoping somebody's there within seconds, but in reality, it's going to probably take a little longer. But we got to make sure that our citizens are protected. Again, I don't want to have this discussion tonight. There's never a good time to raise taxes. And if somebody says, don't raise my taxes, well, I get that, I respect that, but at the same time, the services that we're providing cost money. And, you know, we're talking about, just real quickly, again, I apologize for this, but real quickly, City Hall renovation. We haven't decided yet if we're going to pay for that in cash or if we're going to bond it. We got the Lexus Way extension that we continue to work on. We've been working on that for at least 7 or 8 years now. We're making some progress, but if somebody's looking to see what's coming out on Old Oxford and Connector Way, there's a lot of development coming. Most of it's there, but not all of it. And that's going to cost money. I mean, you know, assuming that the county goes in and pays half of that with us, we're looking at least a $7 or $8 million project there. There was one other one, and I've lost track now, but I mean, I could just keep going and going and going. I mean, yeah, you know, Mrs. Hamrick and I have had many, again, I don't mean to throw you under the bus, I apologize. We've had significant discussion on moving the money that we have into whether it's, you know, CDs, savings accounts, or a combination of both to try to get a better rate of return. But as Mr. Hampton stated earlier tonight, if interest rates go down, which probably will happen, whether it's next year or the year after, that the rate of return that we're going to get is going to go down as well. If the interest rates go up, obviously we're going to hopefully gain a little more money there, but we can't depend on that. We can't. It's going to help, yes, absolutely, it's going to help. You know, we talked about the Revenue Commission tonight and giving Scott and Jessica teeth to go after the businesses that are not currently filing a net profits tax. That's going to take time. That's not going to happen overnight. It's not. The mayor and Devin, you both stated that. It's not going to happen overnight. Developer impact fees. We don't even know if it's, we're still trying to find out whether or not that's going to be legal or not. I think we're a long way off if that's what we decide to do, of implementing that. Yeah, sure, it's going to help, but it's an unknown at this point. You know, we don't know all the needs right now in parks and recreation. I mean, we've had some discussion on a restaurant tax. I think it's been brought up in 3 consecutive meetings now. You know, we've got to take care to make sure that we have the resources in place to do what we're supposed to be doing, and that is to take care of this city and the citizens that live in this city. We have to. Again, I know there's going to be disagreement. You know, can we wait until January sure we can. I get, you know, if that's what we decide to do. I'm just saying I'm a realist. And I watched this over the last it's 13 years now. I've listened to Mayor Prather, I've listened to others. You know, whether it's stormwater issues, personnel issues, fire and police, we're going to have revenue. And the money that we have in reserve could go very, very quick if we're not careful. And Connie, we've been there. We were at the lowest of low points in the city.
$3 billion.
Didn't have, we were, and we're not to that point, but those were the days that I hope we never repeat. So we have to be careful, but at the same time, you know, I'm not right now recommending what we do or don't do. I'm just saying I'm a realist, and we are going to have revenue. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, since we started that way, let's go. Okay, Greg, you're next.
Thanks, Mayor. Really, my comments that I had tonight have been said earlier on the investments and the taxes, so I won't rehash those points, but, you know, they're on the record. So I do want to thank you for coming in and talking to us and giving your viewpoint. It really, you know, I've heard from a lot of people, and believe me when I say it, we will take everyone's view and opinion in consideration. So thank you.
Ms. Hambrick?
I think downtown looks great.
Yes.
We have some new lighting, and the Christmas tree is about to be lit, and I think we can be proud of the way that West Main Street, coming into our city, it's looking a lot better, and there've been a lot of improvements, and I thank Public Works for keeping everything spick and span and clean, and we have a well-functioning city. One thing I'd like to put on the capital needs list, and I can just tell you all now, is I think we need to take an honest assessment of our personnel needs. I think that a dedicated grant writer would pay for itself, and there may be other priorities that the more efficient you can be, and I think we are at the top of our efficiency, and I think a lot of our workers are, quite frankly, exhausted. Cities our size have more people helping, and that is also not a popular thing to say, but I do think that if, as a part of our capital needs, we look at gaps in that direction, it might also be helpful and could actually help us be better. I agree with a lot of what everyone has said tonight, but I'm still in a wait and see. I think these are hard times for a lot of folks still coming out of the pandemic and trying to absorb some of the increase in their property taxes and the school tax and the water fees. And like Connie said earlier, we're not in a dire situation from a standpoint of money in the bank, but we are increasingly moving, like Mark said, into what could become a dire situation with capital needs. And so I'm not willing to make tax increase proposals or to vote for them until I know how the Revenue Commission increases are going to extrapolate out, and how our Toyota and our other occupational taxes, because of people raising their wages all over town. There are a lot of things we don't yet know. And when we do know those numbers, and when the capital needs meeting begins to crystallize the priority of needs that we have, we may have to make some hard decisions, but I'm not in that place yet. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, I too want to, matter of fact, I called Lori and talked to her about that. She and I had a talk earlier this year on talking about the city and so on, and she asked the question, what would you want this city to look like? I said, I want the city to be inviting, especially during Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Make it inviting.
It looks good.
That people want to come in and they're glad to be here, and, you know, being around town, I'm seeing meeting people from Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and they come up and they talk about Georgetown. And something that she told me that Georgetown is one of the top 10 cities that's the best place to come for Christmas.
Wow.
So they made magazines, so that's pretty good. And that goes, and that's to Robert, Chief over there, and your staff. I see them out there, you know, putting things up, and they're not falling off a ladder. That's good to hear too. So, but it is really good to see that the work is being done and that it looks magnificent. And then my wife, who's very critical, I mean, she's like the fashion police. She will give you a citation if something don't look good, but she even commented that said, this place really looks the best I've ever seen in a long time. So hats off to you all on that. All right, Ms. Brent, you up.
I'm just going to echo what pretty much everybody else said. I want to thank Mr. Miller for coming down. I know I responded back to you, and one thing I responded back was when I ran for city council, I didn't run on saying taxes wouldn't be raised. Of course, I don't want them to be, but there are some times that they're gonna have to. And I completely understand, but we have to hear from citizens like you. I mean, we work for you, and we need to take in, your opinions and things like that. So thank you for coming and, listening. If it was to vote right now, I would say no. I would literally say no, because it's just the economy and everything right now. People are hurting. But we do have to get our information together. We got to see what's best for this community. So, again, if it was a vote today, I would be saying no for sure. But thank you again, and that's all I have.
And again, thank you, Tim. Tim was my next door neighbor when I lived in Sturbridge, and he sent that to me, and I took that at heart. Coming from a person who's been in the community, he understands the needs. But he also, when I go back to him, say, I hear what you're saying, and that we're going to, we do work for you, and we're going to try to do the best. But we also want to make sure that you get the service that you should have, because there are basic service that is reasonable that you should not be without. And that's the job of this council, to make sure that happens. So whatever that be, with protection from police, fire, whatever. And that's what we want to do. Mr. Allen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Miller, for coming in. And one of these days, I think somebody's going to come in and say, yeah, I think we should raise taxes. I'm just kidding. That's probably never going to happen. But I think it's our job, because citizens do come in and express their concerns about raising taxes and the impact that it has on them from a financial struggle. And we get that. We really do. I don't want you to think that we sit up here when we're oblivious to that fact. We understand it, but we're still trying to make those tough decisions. I think it's our role to clarify for the public what the situation is. And Mark's talked about that, to some degree here. Where are we currently? What are we trying to do? What gap are we trying to close? What do we see down the road? We have to understand that. We have to understand where our revenue is coming from, so that we can continue to serve the citizens of this community. So it is a challenge, but and we struggle with it, and we will continue to have good, healthy debate. And I know I don't always agree with everybody up here, but we will continue to work together. I would like to request, though, from, I think Millie's maybe leading the beautification subcommittee. I'm really not clear what projects they're working on. So if we could get an update on that committee, so we understand, what the activity is there, that will be helpful. And I have asked for the December 11th meeting to have a draft strategy and budget from the Affordable Housing and Homeless Prevention Director. So we need to know what direction that's going to take. What is that going to look like? We've got somebody in place now. So if she can come to that meeting with just a draft strategy and budget, so we understand financially what that looks like and what, where we can be supported. The revenue streams that we've talked about tonight, I'm not going to hit that anymore, but for the department heads, you guys have turned in lists in terms of cost reduction that you're working on. And I appreciate that. Everybody up here appreciates that. Please just continue to look at cost reduction that we can do from the city standpoint. We continue to look at cost reduction as well. So we're not just up here saying raise taxes. We're also looking at it from the standpoint, if we can reduce costs, that also helps our revenue. So for the department heads and your employees, please continue to do that. I had a conversation with an individual today about the FBI standard of 2 officers per 1,000 people. And the question was, what about the sheriffs, the deputies? Why are they not calculated into that number? And Chief, if you could talk about that a little bit. I know they're not city employees, but is that standard just applies to police department? We've got the sheriff's office close, and I know there's a automatic aid in place, and we budget for full staffing, and we don't have that. So, that's where we're getting into some of this gap issue. Can that gap be closed? I'm just throwing this out here based on what the individual is requesting. Can the gap be closed if we utilize some of that automatic aid? I think I responded, but I told them I would follow up.
Sure. I can't speak for the sheriff's office, not being
neglectful of them, but, I try to look after our guys and our needs. So I'm sure, hopefully Sheriff Hampton's doing the same for his deputies. But, just the short answer, the city's growing the quickest versus the county. I know we're constantly asking, well, not constantly asking for help, but a lot of the calls that we have require more officers more often than the sheriff's office, so a lot of times they are available. They'll come help, and rightfully so. If they need us, then we'll go assist them. But I'd say it's that during the day, mid-afternoon, and even in the evenings as our population grows, the calls increase, and a lot of those calls require more than just one officer. It's been like this way for years. If you have a domestic, that's 2 officers easy on this side of town, and then if there's a crash at 25 in a bypass, that's 2 or 3 officers easy. So that's a whole shift. So that's why we continue to ask. That's just with normal duties. And then we have the overtime, the off-duty requests that come in, like the top of my list, or top of my mind, car shows, parades, 5Ks, things like that. So sometimes the officers stay over. Some of those officers that you see have came in to work, and we at a point to where we're continue to work these guys constantly. They're telling me that they're burnt out. They don't want any more overtime. They don't want any more off duty because they just work constantly. So that's why we continue to look at those statistics and request it. And you all have mentioned the traffic unit. That's a big need. And if we get the traffic unit, we're looking at that. We'll be able to hopefully help take some of the strain and some of the calls and things like that off of normal patrol guys. So they'll go out and handle the traffic complaints and crashes and things like that.
And I think I read somewhere where you maybe made a statement that you're looking at being fully staffed by the end of the year.
That's our goal. We have, if we can get through all the red tape, finish up backgrounds, and then KLEC down at the academy, getting things through there. Sometimes it slows down towards this time of the year, unfortunately, but that's our goal. We have enough people. If everything panned out right with the officers that have applied, that are certified, and the non-certifieds that we're looking at, currently we are 8 short, so we have well above that. So if not by end of the year, certainly by mid-January. So,
thank you.
yes, sir.
And from the revenue streams, we will, well, I guess from the expense side, we will be adding some additional things like technology. And we got, Sarah, the role that she's doing, then that's going to be probably another expense that we're going to be seeing. So technology is not very cheap, but glad to have her in that role. We will continue to look for ways to support the citizens. So thank you, guys.
Ms. Tackett?
You know what, Mayor? I think I'm gonna pass.
You've heard enough, or you've seen enough?
The horse is dead, get off.
So we're not gonna try to even revive it, one thing at all. We're just gonna say
Dead is dead.
dead is dead. We're gonna just drag it out. Well, that's not even a good thing to say.
Get off.
Don't even need to shoot it.
No, don't do that. That's don't start with that. It gets people in trouble. Stop that. Let's move on. Next,
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, again, thank you for showing up and giving us your views. Kim Rice, thank you for showing up tonight. Didn't hear from you, but thank you for being here. Want to congratulate Chief Allgood and getting our first SRO in, Josh Hudnall. Josh comes from the sheriff's office. I worked with him for a long time. He is a great guy, and he will fit in well within the school system. And there's others in the works that will be great, but they're still in the background process and can't speak of those. So, to go off one thing that Mark said, one fire station. Truthfully, we're 2 behind, possibly looking at a third one. Chief Thompson came up and said that his guys had a grant that would have applied for and would have paid for 4 years for firefighters for that. And that would have helped, but, you know, you still have to absorb that in that time when it's, but that would have been a great, start. Chief's looking at the traffic unit and getting that up and running. I think that'll be tremendous. It's, when we had it once before, it really did help slow people down, stop signs, whatever. So that looking forward to that. And then, as far as the question of the mutual aid, you know, the automatic aid, you know, and counting those numbers for hours, you're still looking at two separate government entities, you know. Yes, it is, just like the state police. You have them in the county, but you still can't count them on your list. So, you know, and there's to merge the fire departments, there would be just a ton of hoops to have to jump through as far as raising personnel and personnel salaries and bringing everything up to level. And the biggest argument would be who would lead it. So, which, you know, we all wondered that years ago when that discussion was brought up. So, other than that, hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and see you all Saturday in the parade.
Okay. Again, I want to thank you all for being here, and once again, thank this council for actually being, coming to the forefront of actually speaking out. I think that's important that we engage in conversation. It's very important that people in the community see what we're thinking, because that's why we were elected, they want to know our opinion. You know, that's why they put us up here, and I think we'd be remiss if we don't, and we still need to do what's best, but we also need to know that there are reasonable services that we shouldn't even talk much about, that we got to provide for. And so, that being said, thank you all again. This meeting is adjourned.